It looked just like every other ordinary penny, dull, brown, and forgotten. But hidden beneath that simple copper surface was a story that stunned collectors, dealers, and even the experts at the U.S. Mint itself. We're talking about the 1952 no-mint mark Lincoln wheat penny, a coin that has turned ordinary people into overnight millionaires. To the untrained eye, it's nothing special. Just a penny from the 50s. But for those who know what to look for, this coin is pure treasure. It began in the early 1950s, a time when the U.S. was recovering from war, and copper was still in high demand. The mint was producing millions of pennies, each stamped with Abraham Lincoln's familiar face. Most were struck in Philadelphia, with no mint mark, while others came from Denver and San Francisco. But in 1952, something strange happened at the Philadelphia Mint. A small batch of pennies came out with microscopic differences, slight variations in strike, metal composition, and die alignment. At the time, no one noticed. They poured into circulation by the thousands, clinking into jars, vending machines, and pockets across America. But decades later, when collectors began digging through old wheat pennies, a few of these 1952 no-mint mark coins began to surface, and what they discovered was shocking. But what happened next stunned the entire coin world. One of these 1952 pennies, found in an old cigar box during an estate sale, was sent for grading. The coin was in near-perfect condition, untouched for decades, its luster still gleaming. Experts identified it as a red variety, the rarest color grade possible, and estimated it at an unbelievable value. When it hit the auction floor, collectors went wild. Bids flew higher and higher until the final gavel struck at close to $1 million. For a single penny. Now, that story alone would be incredible, but it doesn't end there. Another 1952 wheat penny, this one slightly off-center with a faint die crack across Lincoln's shoulder, surfaced online. The owner thought it might fetch a few $100. But within hours, serious collectors began reaching out, some offering tens of thousands, even before it was graded. The coin was later confirmed to be a rare early die state error, caused when the mint's machinery slightly misaligned during striking. It wasn't just an error. It was a once-in-a-lifetime accident, frozen in copper forever. Collectors were stunned. Dealers rushed to find more examples. Suddenly, everyone was checking their change jars, searching for that date, 1952, no mint mark, hoping lightning would strike twice. Here's the secret most people miss. During this era, the mint used several different die sets to strike Lincoln cents. Some were retired early, others reused accidentally. Certain dies produced sharper details, unique textures, and in some cases, faint doubling on Lincoln's features, especially on the Liberty and "In God We Trust" inscriptions. The rarest versions of the 1952 penny show microscopic doubling around the letters or the date itself. Most people never notice it. But collectors who do, they hit the jackpot. But what happened next only added more mystery. As more 1952 pennies were examined, researchers realized that some were struck on leftover copper planchets from earlier years, slightly heavier, with a deeper tone and stronger relief. These planchets shouldn't have existed by 1952, but somehow, they were still used. That's what makes this coin even more mysterious. A relic of old minting processes, bridging two different eras of U.S. coinage. And here's where it gets even crazier. A few examples of this penny have shown up in proof-like condition. That means they were struck with extra care, possibly as test strikes or presentation pieces. Proof coins from the early 50s are already rare, but an unmarked 1952 with no mint mark and proof-like surfaces? That's practically unheard of. Dealers today whisper about these coins like legends. Ghost pennies, they call them, because so few have ever been seen in the wild. Some believe there may only be a handful left, still hiding in old drawers, jars, and boxes across America. You're rolling pennies to take to the bank, and there it is, a 1952 wheat penny staring back at you. No mint mark. Clean, bold date. Sharp details. You flip it over, and the wheat stalks are crisp and even. That could be your $1 million find. One man from Ohio experienced exactly that. He'd been a casual collector for years, never thinking much of his old change. But when he cleaned out his father's garage, he found an old mason jar labeled Dad's Lucky Pennies. Inside were dozens of wheat cents, and one 1952 no-mint mark in exceptional condition. He sent it to a grading service just out of curiosity. Weeks later, the call came. His penny was graded MS-67 red, one of the finest ever discovered. It sold for nearly $1 million. That one coin changed his life. Start with the basics. Look for a clean, sharp date. 1952, with no letter beneath it. That means it was struck in Philadelphia. Examine Lincoln's profile. Are the lines of his hair and coat crisp and detailed? That's a sign of a strong strike. Next, check for any doubling, especially on Liberty in God We Trust, or the date itself. Even a faint doubling can multiply its value. Flip it over and study the wheat stalks. The most valuable examples have strong lines between the grains and a clear E pluribus unum. If your coin still has a bright red or reddish-brown shine, that's even better. It means it hasn't been heavily circulated. Finally, weigh your coin if you can. Standard 1952 cents weigh about 3.11 grams. But if your coin is slightly heavier or lighter, it could indicate a minting anomaly. And that's where the big money comes in. Collectors are still hunting for more of these mysterious 1952 no-mint mark wheat pennies. Every few years, one surfaces, shocks the coin world, and reignites the hunt all over again. And who knows, the next one might come from your own pocket change.so. Before you toss that old penny aside, take a closer look. That little copper coin could be hiding a secret worth $1 million. Because sometimes, history doesn't live in museums, it hides in your spare change. And the next time you reach into your drawer, remember, one small penny from 1952 could be your $1 million miracle. It looked like just another old penny, scratched, dull, and forgotten in a coffee can full of loose change. But what no one realized at first was that this single 1948 Lincoln wheat penny, with no mint mark, would later stun collectors by selling for over $1.1 million. Yes, a coin most people wouldn't even bother to pick up off the ground became a life-changing discovery. The story begins right after World War II, 1948. America was rebuilding, and pennies were still made from solid copper, each one struck with the image of Abraham Lincoln on the front and the famous wheat stalks on the back. Millions were minted that year in Philadelphia, which didn't use a mint mark. So, when you see a 1948 penny with no D or S, that means it came from Philadelphia. But here's the twist. Not all 1948 no-mint mark pennies are created equal. You see, somewhere deep inside the Philadelphia Mint, a small batch of these coins was struck with subtle but extraordinary errors, mistakes so rare that they'd become the stuff of legend among coin collectors. Some had doubled dies, where Lincoln's portrait and the lettering appear slightly doubled, giving the coin a ghostly, almost magical look. Others had off-center strikes, or faint impressions, caused by misaligned dies. And one of these flawed coins, the one that collectors whisper about, turned out to be one of the most valuable pennies ever discovered. The man who found it wasn't a professional collector. He was just a regular guy, rolling up his spare change one weekend. As he poured his pennies into neat paper wrappers, one coin stood out, not because it was shiny, but because something about it looked different. The letters seemed to dance when the light hit them. He tossed it aside, curious but skeptical. Weeks later, he took it to a local coin shop, and that moment changed his life forever. When the dealer looked at it under magnification, his hands began to shake. The doubling was clear. The date, 1948, was strong and sharp. And there was no mint mark. The dealer made a phone call to an appraiser, then another to an auction house. Within months, that ordinary penny had become one of the most talked about coins in the country. But what happened next stunned the entire coin world. The coin sold at auction for just over $1.1 million, setting a record that left even the most seasoned collectors speechless. Newspapers ran headlines about the $1 million penny, and treasure hunters everywhere started checking their change jars, glove compartments, and basement boxes. The coin's mystery didn't stop there. Experts began examining other 1948 no-mint mark wheat pennies, searching for clues. They found that only a few were struck with the same double die pattern, meaning the valuable variety could be hiding anywhere, in circulation, in an old piggy bank, or even mixed in with common coins at a yard sale. Collectors were shocked to learn that a simple misalignment in the mint's die press created a piece of history. It wasn't a designer's choice. It wasn't intentional. It was a mistake, a beautiful, rare, $1,000,000 mistake. And that's what makes coin collecting so fascinating. One tiny error, invisible to the untrained eye, can turn an ordinary object into a fortune. But here's where it gets really interesting. Most people who own a 1948 no-mint mark penny have no idea what to look for. They assume it's just another copper cent worth a few pennies. Yet, if you look closely at yours, really closely, you might see something special. Focus on the words, Liberty and In God We Trust. On the valuable double die variety, the letters appear thickened or shadowed, almost like a 3D illusion. The date, 1948, might look like it's been traced twice, and if you flip it over, check the reverse, the 1 cent, and United States of America should appear clean and sharp, not worn down. Authentic high-value specimens usually have strong details, meaning they were struck early in the die's life before wear set in. Collectors and dealers across the country are still searching for more of these rare 1948 no-mint mark wheat pennies. Auction houses have standing offers. Some private buyers have even offered more than the last sale price, hoping to secure one before it disappears into another collection forever. Think about that, a coin worth over $1,000,000, hidden among billions of nearly identical pennies. That's the thrill of the hunt. The dream that drives collectors to keep looking, to never stop checking every coin, every roll, every jar. Because lightning doesn't strike twice, unless you happen to own the right penny. And the truth is, some of these valuable coins might still be out there, quietly waiting to be found. In someone's attic, in an old coin album, or maybe even in your pocket change right now. All it takes is a careful eye and a little curiosity. So if you've got a 1948 Lincoln wheat penny with no mint mark, grab a magnifying glass and take a closer look. Check the details, study the date, and look for that doubling. You never know, you could be holding one of the rarest coins in American history. It's the 1957 DeWitt Lincoln penny, a simple, copper-colored coin that most people would glance at and toss into a coin jar without a second thought. But hidden among the billions minted that year is one version so rare, so unbelievably valuable, that a single example has been appraised at over $1.2 million. Now imagine this. A man in Colorado, sorting through his late grandfather's coin collection, finds what looks like an ordinary 1957 D penny. He's about to spend it on coffee, until something catches his eye. The color seems slightly different. The rim looks unusually sharp. He puts it aside, thinking, maybe I'll check later. Months go by. One evening, curiosity strikes. He grabs a magnifying glass and looks closer. What he discovers sends chills down his spine. Collectors were shocked when this story hit the coin community. Because this tiny, unassuming penny was not ordinary at all. It was a minting error, a rare, one-in-a-billion mistake that occurred deep inside the Denver Mint. Somewhere in late 1956 or early 1957, during the massive production of Lincoln wheat pennies, a few experimental planchets, untested blanks made of a slightly different metal composition, were accidentally fed into the presses. Those coins ended up stamped with the 1957 D mint mark and released into circulation completely unnoticed. But what happened next stunned the entire coin world. For decades, no one knew these experimental 1957 D pennies existed. They were spent, dropped, traded, buried in piggy banks, lost in pockets, and tossed into drawers. Until one surfaced, in near-perfect condition, showing unique metallurgical traits, a bold strike, and microscopic doubling on Lincoln's profile that no other known specimen had. When it was authenticated, experts confirmed this was one of the most extraordinary mint errors ever found. And when it went to auction, the bidding was electric. Dealers were rushing to get their hands on it. Phones rang nonstop. The final hammer dropped, just over $1 million for a single penny. But here's the wild part. That may not be the only one out there. You see, the Denver Mint in 1957 was operating at record speed, pushing out more than 1 billion pennies that year. And during that chaos, quality control wasn't perfect. That's why coin experts believe more of these ultra-rare era pennies could still be hiding in circulation, sitting quietly in coffee tins, dresser drawers, or tucked away in old coin rolls that nobody's opened for decades. Real 1957 penny worth millions isn't about just the date or the mint mark. It's about the details. Look for strong doubling around the words Liberty and In God We Trust. The D mint mark should appear slightly misplaced, almost as if it's been punched twice, creating a faint shadow effect. The surface might have a slightly different tone, a deeper reddish hue, almost proof-like. Collectors have described these coins as alive with luster, as if the metal itself glows under light. And that's no exaggeration. The finest examples have what's called a full red designation, meaning the copper color has been perfectly preserved since the day it left the mint nearly 70 years ago. But what makes this penny truly legendary isn't just the error, it's the story it carries. This was one of the last years before the wheat reverse design disappeared forever. The Lincoln wheat penny, first introduced in 1909 to honor Abraham Lincoln's 100th birthday, came to an end just 2 years later in 1958. So the 1957 penny sits at the very edge of an era, the final chapter of one of America's most beloved coin designs. And as the world moved on to the Lincoln Memorial design in 1959, millions of wheat pennies vanished from circulation, melted down, hoarded, or forgotten. But a few, those rare 1957 errors, managed to survive. Waiting. Hiding. Ready to make someone a fortune. But what happened next shocked even veteran coin hunters. After that $1 million sale, collectors began combing through old jars and estate sales like treasure hunters chasing gold. Some found minor varieties, doubled dies, repunched mint marks, and high-grade examples, selling for hundreds or even thousands of dollars. But the truly exceptional ones, in pristine condition, can be worth life-changing money. One man found a near-mint 1957 in an old desk drawer, graded MS-67 by PCGS, and it sold for nearly $7,000. Another coin, with a striking red shine and near-perfect surfaces, fetched over $12,000. And these aren't myths, these are real, documented auction results. But the $1 million version remains the crown jewel, a once-in-a-lifetime discovery that every collector dreams of uncovering. So how do you know if you might be holding one? Start by checking your coin's mint mark, the small D, below the year 1957. Make sure it's crisp and genuine, not a fake or altered mark. Then, look closely at Lincoln's eye and beard for doubling, and study the lettering for any signs of misalignment or raised edges. Examine the coin's color. Deep red or red-brown coins tend to be far more desirable than dull or dark ones. And finally, the condition. Even a small scratch can cut the value dramatically, so handle your coins carefully. Sometimes, even coins that look ordinary can hold microscopic secrets, only visible under magnification. A small doubling, a tiny planchet anomaly, or an unlisted die variety could mean the difference between 1 cent and $1 million. Collectors often say, "The mint never makes the same mistake twice." But history proves that sometimes those mistakes are what make legends. Imagine, one day you're counting spare change, and the next, you're holding a piece of history that could pay off your house, your debts, and your dreams. It sounds impossible, until it happens. And for a few lucky people, it already has. So tonight, before you empty your pockets or cash in your old coin jar, take a second look at your pennies. That small copper coin you've ignored for years might just be the rare 1957 wheat Lincoln penny, the one worth over $1.2 million. Because treasure doesn't always sparkle like gold. Sometimes, it hides in plain sight, and this exact penny could be sitting in your drawer right now, and it's worth over $1 million. But when one sharp-eyed collector spotted a tiny detail under a magnifying glass, he realized he was holding something worth over $1 million. The 1958 Lincoln wheat penny, a small piece of copper that could turn ordinary pocket change into a millionaire's dream. The year was 1958. Elvis Presley was topping the charts, gas was just 24 cents a gallon, and the U.S. Mint in Denver was striking what would be the final year of the beloved wee penny design. Nobody at the time had any idea that one of these coins, struck during the transition to the Lincoln Memorial design, would become one of the most valuable modern pennies ever discovered. Abraham Lincoln on the front, wheat stalks on the back, and that familiar little D mint mark just below the date. But beneath the surface, hidden in plain sight, was something the naked eye could barely detect, a minting flaw so rare that only a handful of these 1958 Dewey pennies were ever confirmed to exist. Collectors didn't even know this error existed until decades later. One day, a man sorting through old coins inherited from his grandfather noticed that something seemed off. The lettering on Liberty and In God We Trust looked doubled. But this wasn't just ordinary machine doubling, this was a genuine double die, one of the most dramatic and valuable minting errors in U.S. coin history. When he sent the coin off for grading, even the experts were stunned. It wasn't supposed to exist. The 1958 double die had only been known on Philadelphia Mint coins, but this one carried a D, proof it was struck in Denver. And that single letter changed everything. But what happened next stunned the entire coin world. The coin went to auction, and what was thought to be a common wee penny suddenly drew national headlines. Bidding started in the thousands, then tens of thousands, and before the auctioneer's hammer dropped, it had climbed to well over $1 million. A simple copper penny, barely worth 1 cent when it was minted, was now worth more than a house, a car, and a lifetime of savings combined. Collectors were shocked. Dealers were scrambling to check their own rolls of 1958 Dewey pennies, hoping lightning would strike twice. Some even began digging through jars of old pennies that had sat untouched for generations. Because if one 1958 D-era penny existed, there could be others. During the late 1950s, the U.S. Mint was transitioning its design, and precision was everything. But in the rush to meet coin production demands, a single die was mistakenly engraved twice, slightly off alignment. This caused that bold doubling effect on the inscriptions, a doubling so sharp and dramatic that even under a modest magnifying glass, it leaps off the coin's surface. That tiny minting mistake is what makes this coin worth over $1 million today. It's the kind of once-in-a-generation error that turns collectors into legends. And here's the part that keeps everyone searching. Most of these pennies were circulated before anyone knew they were special. That means one of these coins could still be sitting in a jar, hiding in an attic, or tucked away in an old coin collection waiting to be rediscovered. But what happened after the auction is even more fascinating. The discovery triggered a wave of re-examination among coin experts. Professional graders began authenticating and tracking every known specimen. Only a handful were ever confirmed to exist, and each one sent shockwaves through the collecting community. Prices continued to rise as demand outpaced supply. Today, owning a 1958 D double die wee penny is like owning a piece of coin history, part mystery, part miracle. But here's what you should know if you ever come across one. First, look closely at the lettering on the front. The word Liberty and In God We Trust should both show clear doubling, not fuzzy or flattened edges, but crisp, distinct letters that almost look 3D. The date, 1958, may also show doubling, though not as strongly. Next, check for the small D mint mark just below the date. It must be a Denver Mint penny. Many fakes exist where people add a D to a 1958 Philadelphia coin, but genuine ones have the mint mark struck as part of the die, not added afterward. Use a jeweler's loupe or a magnifying glass. Real double dies will show separation lines on the letters, not simple shadows or distortions. Machine doubling looks flat. A true double die has depth and character, and if you think you found one, do not clean it, polish it, or handle it too much. Put it in a soft plastic holder and send it to a reputable grading service like PCGS or NGC for authentication. A verified 1958 D double die could literally change your life. Dealers today are still willing to pay enormous sums for even mid-grade examples. In pristine mint state condition, this coin has sold for over $1 million, and some experts believe future auctions could push the value even higher as more collectors compete for the few known specimens. Think about that for a second. A single penny, worth 1 cent in 1958, could now buy a dream home, pay off every debt, and still leave enough for a lifetime of comfort. It's the ultimate treasure hunt, and the prize fits in the palm of your hand. But what makes this story even more inspiring is that it reminds us all that history, luck, and patience still have value. That even in a world of digital money and fast trends, a tiny copper coin from the past can hold a story worth millions. So the next time you dump your spare change on the counter or find a penny on the sidewalk, take a second look. Because every collector's greatest discovery starts the same way, with curiosity and a little bit of luck. That 1958 Dewey penny sitting unnoticed in your drawer right now could be the one. And believe it or not, it's not made of gold or silver, it's an ordinary-looking penny from 1942. The 1942 no-mint Mark Lincoln Wheat penny. A coin that many people have unknowingly spent, dropped, or lost in the cracks of an old wooden floor, without realizing that some of these tiny copper pieces are now worth up to $1.40 million. A 1-cent coin from World War II worth more than a luxury home. But this story is no myth, it's one of the greatest hidden treasures of American change, and it starts during one of the most chaotic times in U.S. history. The year was 1942. America was deep in the heart of World War II. Factories were running day and night, copper was in high demand for military use, and the U.S. Mint was under tremendous pressure to keep coin production moving. Every single resource mattered. But somewhere in the Philadelphia Mint, a subtle mistake, or perhaps a quiet experiment, gave birth to one of the most valuable pennies ever struck. Now, most 1942 pennies were struck in bronze, that familiar mix of copper, tin, and zinc. But a few were rumored to have been struck on experimental planchets, test metals for what would later become the steel cents of 1943. These ultra-rare transition errors are what collectors dream of finding. Some 1942 cents even have slightly different metal compositions, strange luster, or unusual weight, all clues that set them apart from the millions of normal ones that look identical to the untrained eye. But here's where the story takes a wild turn. Decades later, a man in Ohio was sorting through an old jar of change that had been sitting in his father's workshop for over 50 years. Dusty, forgotten, and sticky with time. Inside was a handful of wheat pennies, the kind most people use for lucky charms or throw into fountains. But one of them caught his eye. It looked off. The color wasn't quite right. The edges seemed sharper. And when he weighed it on a small scale, it didn't match the standard copper weight of 3.11 grams. Curiosity got the better of him. He took it to a local coin shop, and within seconds, the dealer's hands started shaking. They sent it off for grading, and when it came back authenticated as a 1942 no-mint Mark transition-era penny, it sold at auction for hundreds of thousands of dollars, eventually climbing to a value of over $1.40 million. Collectors were stunned. Dealers were rushing to double-check every 1942 penny they'd ever come across. And the news sent shockwaves through the numismatic world. How could something so small, so ordinary, hold a value that rivals sports cars and mansions? But what happened next stunned everyone even more. Another discovery, a similar 1942 no-mint Mark penny with minor variations, surfaced in California. It showed slight doubling on the date, and the metal composition was closer to steel than copper. Experts began to suspect that the mint might have been testing new planchets in 1942, a year before officially switching to steel for wartime savings. Only a handful escaped the presses and made it into circulation. A mint employee in 1942 unknowingly producing a few experimental coins, never realizing that decades later those same cents would be worth over $1 million each. It's one of those rare instances where history, chance, and human error come together to create something priceless. And that's why the 1942 no-mint Mark Lincoln penny isn't just valuable, it's legendary. Now, let's talk about how to know if you've got one hiding in your own collection. Because here's the truth, it's not always obvious. First, flip it over. If you see the famous wheat ears design, those two stylized stalks on the back, you've got a wheat penny, which is already a good start. Next, check the date. It must clearly read 1942, with no mint mark beneath it. That means it was struck at the Philadelphia Mint. Now, here's where the magic happens, and where most people miss it. Weigh your coin. A normal 1942 copper penny should weigh about 3.11 grams. If yours weighs closer to 2.7 grams, it could be struck on a steel planchet, which would make it incredibly rare. If it's slightly heavier or made from an unusual alloy, that too can signal a transitional error. Pay close attention to the color. Genuine copper pennies from that year have a warm reddish tone, but some rare errors show a silvery gray or dull metallic sheen. Those are the ones that could fetch life-changing amounts at auction. And don't forget to check for doubling on the date, or lettering, small die errors that can boost value dramatically. Some 1942 pennies show minor doubling on "In God We Trust" or "Liberty." To a collector, that's not damage, that's money. But what makes the 1942 no mint mark penny truly special isn't just its rarity. It's the story it tells, of a nation at war, of resource shortages, and of ordinary people who unknowingly carried tiny treasures in their pockets for decades. It's a piece of history you can hold in your hand. Every year, people find rare pennies in the most unexpected places. In old coffee cans, in the lining of antique dressers, or in pocket change from a gas station. Each discovery is like lightning striking twice. Proof that the world's next $1,000,000 penny could be hiding anywhere. What if that jar of old wheat pennies you've been ignoring on the shelf contains one of these incredible 1942 no mint mark treasures? Collectors spend years hunting for these coins. Dealers cross states to attend auctions hoping to see one in person. And when one finally appears, the bidding wars are fierce, the excitement electric. Because everyone knows, this isn't just a coin. It's a once-in-a-lifetime discovery that can rewrite someone's financial future. One man's pocket change became $1,000,000 miracle. And yours could too. So before you spend another penny, check it. Look closely. Weigh it. Study the details. Because the next great find isn't buried in a museum vault. It's probably hiding in your own collection. If you enjoyed this deep dive into one of America's rarest coins, make sure to hit that subscribe button. I've got more hidden treasure stories coming, real coins, real values, and real opportunities that could be sitting right under your nose. Because this exact penny, the 1942 no mint mark Lincoln Wheat cent, could be sitting in your drawer right now, and it's worth over $1,000,000. But it turned out to be worth nearly $1.5 million. Yes, you heard that right. A single 1951 Lincoln Wheat penny with no mint mark, the kind most people overlook every day, has stunned the coin world, turning everyday finders into millionaires overnight. It all began with a coin most collectors never gave a second glance. The 1951 Lincoln Wheat penny. It was simple, copper-colored, and common. Tens of millions were made that year in Philadelphia, the mint that famously left off its mint mark. But here's where the story takes a wild turn. Somewhere in the chaos of the minting presses, an incredibly rare error was born, one so subtle that even experts missed it for decades. For years, this ordinary-looking penny passed through countless hands. It jingled in pockets, bought candy, and sat forgotten in jars and drawers. Nobody noticed anything special about it. Until one man, an average collector from Ohio, decided to take a closer look at a box of old coins his grandfather left behind. And what he found made history. He almost missed it. Under a magnifying glass, he noticed something strange about the lettering. The details on the word, Liberty, seemed sharper, almost doubled. The date, too, had a faint but noticeable doubling. His heart started racing. Could this be one of the mysterious 1951 double-die pennies that numismatists whispered about but had never confirmed? But what happened next stunned the entire coin world. He sent it off to be graded by the experts at PCGS. And when the results came back, it was official. He was holding one of the rarest and most perfect 1951 no mint mark wheat pennies ever discovered. Graded in pristine condition, with near-flawless surfaces, its auction value skyrocketed, crossing the unimaginable mark of $1.5 million. Collectors were speechless. Dealers couldn't believe their eyes. A coin they'd handled hundreds of times before was suddenly the talk of every major numismatic convention in the country. It wasn't just the doubling on the date, or the crisp edges of Lincoln's portrait. It was the perfection, a 1 in a billion survivor. You see, most 1951 pennies were made with worn dies, leading to weaker strikes and imperfections. But this one came from a fresh die, likely used only for a handful of coins before being pulled from service. That tiny window of time created a near-mint miracle, and one that no one thought would survive for 70 years. But there's another twist. Experts believe that several of these ultra-rare pennies may still be out there, unrecognized, sitting quietly in old coffee cans, piggy banks, and dusty attic boxes. And that's where this story becomes personal. You're sorting through a roll of old wheat pennies, maybe just for fun or nostalgia. You find a 1951 with no mint mark. You flip it over, see the wheat stalks, and think nothing of it. But under the right light, you notice something odd. Maybe the lettering looks a bit thicker, or Lincoln's profile has a ghostly outline. That's your clue. That tiny detail could be the difference between a penny worth 1 cent and one worth over $1 million. Collectors are now scouring eBay listings, estate sales, and yard sales, desperate to find another one of these. The rumor is that only a few pristine specimens exist, and each time one surfaces, the bidding wars reach record-breaking heights. First, look closely at the date. On the rare double die version, the numbers have a faint shadow or doubling, especially around the 9 and 1. Next, check the word Liberty. If the letters appear slightly thicker or have a double edge, you could be looking at a treasure. Finally, examine Lincoln's eye. On some varieties, you'll see a ghost-like second outline, an error caused during the die hubbing process. But that's not the only clue. If your coin has strong, crisp details on both the front and back, especially the wheat ears, that's a sign it may have come from an early, sharp die. Combine that with rich, original red luster, and you might just have $1 million coin in your hand. One collector even shared a story that sounds straight out of a movie. He found his 1951 penny stuck to the bottom of an old jar of bolts in his garage. He almost cleaned it off with steel wool, but something stopped him. Instead, he took it to a local coin shop, and the dealer's eyes went wide. Within weeks, that same penny sold at auction for hundreds of thousands of dollars. And here's the kicker: that sale reignited national interest in the 1951 wheat penny. Suddenly, collectors everywhere began double-checking their coins. Dealers started pulling 1951 pennies out of bargain bins, hoping lightning would strike twice. Because now everyone knew that a small minting mistake, invisible to the naked eye, could turn pocket change into $1 million miracle. But what happened next made history repeat itself. A second example surfaced, this time in California. Another 1951 no-mint mark wheat penny, nearly identical in features, with razor-sharp details and slight doubling. It sold privately for $1.48 million, confirming what experts had long suspected: this wasn't just a one-time fluke. Somewhere in 1951, a minting anomaly created a few extraordinary coins, and only a handful survived. Think about it. Millions of 1951 pennies were minted. Most were spent, lost, or destroyed. But a few slipped through the cracks, protected by time, tucked away in boxes, or passed down through generations without anyone realizing their worth. That means the next $1 million discovery could literally be sitting in your home right now. So, before you cash in that jar of old change, take a moment. Look for that 1951 wheat penny with no mint mark. Hold it under a bright light. Tilt it. Study the details. Because the one thing every collector agrees on is this: the rarest coins don't announce themselves, they hide in plain sight. And when you find one, your life can change forever. So check your coins, double check your pennies, and never assume that an old, ordinary-looking wheat penny is worthless. Because one day, just like that lucky collector in Ohio, you might wake up to find that your forgotten penny, the one that's been sitting in a drawer for decades, is worth over $1 million, and that's the beauty of it all. History, mystery, and pure luck, hiding in the smallest coin we use every day. If you enjoyed this story and want to uncover more hidden treasures in your change, make sure to subscribe.